beautiful. President Greg is unable to be with us. He's not feeling well. So my name is Josh Chapman. I am the president-elect. I'm happy to be here today. National anthem, Dr. Lester. Can you lead us in that?
Here you go, here you go.
Let me get that strawberry shortcake. Let's sing with me.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous night o'er the ramparts we marched were so gallantly streamed, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's move on. Can you come please? Indication.
No.
Everyone's good.
Check.
You may have to use the big one.
I will pray. Heavenly Father, we welcome your presence. We are so thankful for your favor and blessings, and for our individual lives, our families, for this area. And we do, in this moment, cry out to you to continue your favor and blessing on our leaders, locally, statewide, and our federal leaders. God, have mercy on us. Many challenges that we face, but we look to you. Thank you for the love that you put in our hearts, prompting to serve. May we, by example, Lord, show others that service above self is the way. So thank you for this day, for this meal, for this privilege of being together in fellowship in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you. All right. Family of Rotary, Stephanie Walker.
Good morning. I'm filling in for Mr. Duncan today. We don't have any anniversaries this month, but we do have birthdays. Brandon Hurst is on February the 13th. George Flowers on February the 17th. Robert Steensma, February 19th. Marcus Cannon, February 20th. Davis Flowers, February 20th. Paul Swanson, February 20th. Sam Wainwright, February 23rd. And also James Kelly on February 23rd. And Olivia McDaniel on February 24th. Happy birthday.
Hearing those dates reminds me that tomorrow is a very special day. I need to go whenever I leave here with something I better have. So happy Valentine's, everybody. Introduction of guests and visiting Rotarians, Cameron Good.
We're happy to welcome our guests and visiting Rotarians today. When I call your name, will you please stand and remain standing until all is recognized. John Gormley, guest of Brett Hendricks. Patrick Mallory, guest of Dr. Coe. Chris Dixon, guest of Greg Hendricks. Valerie Russell, guest of Robbie Thomas. Amy Dixon, guest of Greg Hendricks. Ryan Redmond, guest of Demetrius Bogan. Alex Reynolds, guest of Catherine Mayway. Are there any visitors we may have missed? Thanks for coming today.
All right, can't pass the drawing, Lawrence.
209.
209 points. Last score, 8080. Mr. Fonte.
Congratulations.
Four of diamonds. Thank you for playing. All right, really no announcements today. Next week, we won't meet, and I'll touch on this at the end as well, due to President's Day. But we are happy to welcome our speaker today, Chris Dixon. Chris was born into a military family in Ozark. He spent several years in Alabama, Germany, Texas, before finally settling here in Dothan. He just celebrated his 13th year with Southeast Health, where he currently works on the EPIC team as a database administrator. Chris holds a master's degree in cybersecurity and information assurance. Also, he holds many IT certifications, including certified ethical hacker and computer hacking forensic investigator certification. Help me welcome Chris today.
All right, so my name is Chris Dixon. I was gonna make James do some work and stand around and walk back and forth with the microphone. I'll sit there, panning back and forth with the iPad, but I'm gonna be nice enough. So I'm sad to say that I thought this was a 2-hour discussion on how cloud changed the world. And y'all are probably glad it's not. So it's about cybersecurity. I'm from a healthcare background, so I kind of lean towards healthcare whenever I talk about this, because that's what's near and dear to my heart, and it affects more than just monetarily, it affects actual people's lives, so it's pretty important. Don't know. I'm here talking as myself, I'm not representing anybody. Don't know how many of you heard, Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare just got hit by ransomware back on February 2nd. They've been down on paper ever since. So they had to cancel all of their non-critical procedures and everything else, and they're turning away everything but level 1 traumas. Here recently, they started taking some more patients, but last I heard, they were still down. They, lawsuits will happen. Lawsuits will happen, more than likely due to patient confidentiality breaches, but also their brands may be tarnished. And that's something that's hard to repair. As we've seen with anybody who's now out there, Tuscaloosa fans out there, DCH Health System was hit a couple of years ago. They shut down 3 of their hospitals for non-critical patients. And the students now just say, don't come here. So, how does that sit well for a hospital that's, major player in the market? And my speech teacher is going to be mad because I'm for patients, but she'll be all right. So how do these things happen? We hear about it every day on the news. Somebody else got hit, somebody else got hit, they got malware, they got attacked. Patient information was leaked. Employees identification was leaked. Things happen. Well, phishing is going to be the number one cause of that. And it affects not just CEOs, although we're picking on a CEO here in this particular little comment. We got an email from IB Banker asking for his social security number and his password. I don't know how many people would fall for that, but I would hope nobody. And so what's the goal of phishing? The goal of phishing is to get you to give them something they want to get into your system. Whether that be credentials, passwords, your social security number, your birthday, mother's name, all of that good stuff that they need to do things to you and your accounts. They also want you to get to try to run malicious code by opening a PDF or other attachment that they send you. That's how they get into your systems. So what's something that we can do as, leaders in organizations and, team leaders and things like that, training for all employees, not just frontline employees, but from the front line all the way up to the CEOs. Everybody needs to have some kind of cyber training. How do you spot a phishing email? How do you know that that attachment didn't come from a Sue or a Joe? These things need to be taught and know what to look for and know what to see. Also, a lot of the way the culture is nowadays, sometimes people get embarrassed and they don't want to self-report when they've done something for fear of being fired, made fun of in the workplace. And that's just something that really needs to change. If somebody reports a suspicious email and it's not phishing or malware, we don't need to say, hey, Josh here reported a legitimate email. Good for you, Josh. You reported a good email, but you were questionable about it, so that's the end of it. We don't need to, oh, hey, look at Josh, he reports real emails. That's just not how we need to focus and how we need to be as leaders in systems. We need to help encourage, train up those who may need. Now something that might, be a little bit closer to everybody else. Colonial Pipeline cyber attack that happened back in 2021. This shut down a major oil pipeline for 5 days. Anytime anybody talks about oil stoppage, everybody goes crazy. There's attacks on the gas stations. Everybody lines up for fear of gas shortages, gas prices going astronomical. And so that's just another critical infrastructure there. And how did this particular attack happen? It happened because of a bad password and no additional protection on the system. Colonial Pipeline actually paid a ransom of about $4 million to get their data unlocked and back online. That's not something that's not nowhere you need to ever want to be. And that leads me into talking about password length versus complexity. So we all heard the stories on the web pages and everything. We want your password to be 8 to 10 characters. You need to have upper lowercase, ampersand, at symbol, letters, numbers, all the different character mixes out there. But when it really comes down to it, complexity is just going to get users to do one thing: write them down on a piece of paper. And I don't know, pencil is a pretty easy word to me, but right there it looks like they've got a password rotation that's going on too much, as you can see. And if anybody knows what that is from, raise your hand. Yep, that's War Games. The old Matthew Broderick movie. And how did he get into that situation? Well, he just social engineered his way into that situation. So he could get over that. This is kind of an example of what we talk about whenever we talk about complexity versus length. The top one here is going to be a troubadour. It's got all of the things that everybody asks for. It's got symbols, uppercase, lowercase, numbers. But a lot of those numbers and symbols are just common replacements. Password cracking programs already have those built in. It wouldn't take much time at all to break that password nowadays. The bottom one it's a little bit simpler. It's going to be, the example here is just 4 random words of correct horse, battery statement. And they kind of give you a funny little thing to remember that by. There have been some arguments on this particular choice of whether or not it's still secure anymore. But honestly, if you were going to pick this randomness, you would just add a few more words here. You would be more than good to go on most systems. Truth be told, if anybody's going to get your system, chances are they already know your password. They're just going to figure out a way to get in there. Besides that, the NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, they recommend passphrases over password complexity now, just for the fact that the longer the password, the harder it is to crack. And password managers, they are great tools until they're not. And also, the password manager is only as good as the password protecting vault. If you have a password of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on your password manager, then everything behind it is just fair game. But also, what happens when those password managers get breached themselves? So, LastPass is a major player in that area. They released a statement earlier this year that they had been breached. Their first announcement was they simply had access to the source code for a few days and not any user information, be that the vault, and all of their passwords were stolen. Come to find out, about a month later, they released another statement saying that, oh yes, all of your vault data has been stolen as well. Rest assured it is encrypted. With them having the source code and the vault data, it's not going to take the time to reverse engineer that. It's going to be a bad day. So, FYI, if you have LastPass and not heard of this, you probably want to change that or go to another system. So, what else can we do? If you haven't heard of MFA or two-factor, it's something we can put on these things that everybody has nowadays, smartphones. You have Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, there's Duo. And all this is it adds another layer of protection to everybody's accounts. It does add another layer of annoyance, because whenever you log in, you're going to have to verify who you are. But when you think about it, at least if an attacker has your password, they at least have to try really hard to break with your MFA. It can be done, but the chances are lower that they're going to use it. But it can be done. And that's just adding another layer of defense in your toolbox there. So one question might be, well, let's just cut off the internet. Well, this was back in the early 90s, late 80s. The first healthcare ransomware attack occurred. It was distributed by a floppy disk by a doctor. And after about 90 power cycles on your computer displayed a ransom note. So, there are attacks that happened before the internet. Floppies are old school. Anybody remembers 5 1/4 inch floppies or 3 1/2 inch floppies? I do very much.
Me too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Those were a little bit before my time. Not much. But now we have these funny little things called USBs. Attackers have put malicious payloads on them and just went and dumped them out in front of buildings and businesses. And what do we do as human nature when we find something? We plug it in. And what happens? The code goes out there and does what it is intended to do. You could do the same thing with CD-ROMs, but they usually don't hold up out there. Speaking of that, I'm sure everybody knows what this picture is of the ex-president Ahmadinejad from Iran touring his uranium enrichment facilities. These are the centrifuges in there. Well, not officially, but it is thought that the United States and Israel did a joint effort and delivered a nice little payload to their systems, and it was introduced by a USB that attacked a specific controller that controlled these centrifuges, and during a specific cycle would randomly vary their centrifugal speed. It's very curious, you know, if you're just thinking about it as a random person attacking this, you know, it's just not going to fit. It's a nation state that's attacking it. And what did that, when that system sped up and sped down these rotors in a random method, it just caused them to destroy themselves. And what better way to attack their facility than from the inside without having to do any kind of military action? So who are these people? They're the people you think they are. They're nation states. They're sponsored by Russian mafia. A lot of these groups have ex-FSB and ex-KGB agents working for them. You know, a lot of the other nation states, China, Iran, North Korea, Pakistan, you know, this is where they find safe harbor and where they operate out of, because they know 9 times out of 10 the FBI or other 3-letter acronym agency is not going to go into those countries and track down these people. And a lot of times these governments do not want to work or do not want to do anything because they're getting kickbacks from these ransomware attacks as well. Places like North Korea, they just use it to fund their nuclear arms program. Iran, they're going to funnel that money into other terrorist attacks. This was a screenshot taken a couple of years ago. August 21st is when this particular attack happened on Missouri Delta Medical Center. The screenshot is from the Hive Group's publicity website, and that is found on the dark web, if you want to call it that. If you've never been on there, it's not anything real glory. It's not pretty. It looks like, you know, the early BBS boards or the early web pages of the internet. It's just not fun. That was there. That's where they go out there and show you that they have all of your information, and you have so many hours to get with them, or they're going to publicly disclose everything that they have. I recently went back to the website, and they have finally been, part of them has been taken down. They're publicly, excuse me, I have to turn the page. Their private sector servers have been taken down. There weren't any arrests made, but, you know, the Justice Department did do a good job of at least getting to this point. And so we hope that, you know, they can get further along. Most of the Hive, from what I understand, you know, they're just going to splinter off and start new groups, and a lot of them are based out of Russia. So this is my last slide. And I don't mean to PowerPoint everybody to death, but sometimes it's just a better visual approach than just listening to me talk. The human factor is the weakest link in everything that we have going on, especially in cybersecurity, because people make mistakes. Everybody is fallible and nobody is infallible. And it could be from just an uneducated user clicking on a link, or somebody who's responsible for a configuration somewhere misses a step and leaves a hole. But in a paradox, you can think the human factor is also our greatest asset against threats, because educated users will know what to look for and know when and when not to click those links to open those accounts. If anybody wants to read a book about good social engineering and how to deceive people, this one is a good one. It's Art of Deception by Kevin Meninick. It is really good, and he exploits the human willingness to help their other person. We do that a lot in the South because we know what it's like if somebody needs help. We want to help them. And so he plays on that willingness to help to get the information he wants. And it's not always about getting login credentials. It could be getting something as simple as a phone directory of employees. I'll leave you with a story of how a facility was hit not a local one. It was a story that was given to me when we went up to Wisconsin to an epic seminar. And so we had Betty Smith, who was on vacation. She got a call from her daughter. Her daughter was trying to open an attachment from her HOA, and whenever she tried to open it, it would never work. And so she called her mom and said, "Hey, can you please try to open this attachment for me?" So she opens her laptop up. You know, it's her work laptop. She opens it, tries to open the attachment. Says, this is working. And so she says, "You need to call the HOA." So Betty Smith goes about the rest of her vacation, logs back onto the VPN on Monday. Unbeknownst to her, the payload has now made its way over the VPN and sitting on those corporate servers back at the main healthcare facility. This attacker just hit the jackpot. It was not his intention to get hold of a healthcare facility, but he acted very quickly and started encrypting servers. Luckily, they were able to combat it pretty swiftly, but the moral here is, you know, it was an attack of opportunity. You know, just as something as simple as an email page. Wasn't intended for healthcare, but that's where it got. And so, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. Anybody have any questions after that?
So what was the ransom demand? Tallahassee Memorial, and why didn't they pay it? They've been down 12 days. That's probably tens of millions of dollars.
I have not heard of any ransomware demands yet. They usually don't post that information. Some places do, some places don't. I know that there's been several local places hit in Dothan, including the rather large place that we were actually go and talk to some of the people there. They would not disclose to us how much their ransom was, even though they did not pay it. Hopefully they'll see and be transparent. That's one of the main problems about some of this stuff and why it's hard to get more information is we need to share that stuff. We need to have those talks. If somebody gets hit, Houston County school system was one of them. Everybody remembers that was a pretty big one around here. You know, we should all sit down and talk and see how it happened. How can we help each other? What did you put in place to mitigate it? You know, we don't have to put it out there for the public to read, but you know, meeting and talking amongst the major players in the area would do wonders to help the community. It's also over here. Yes, sir.
What's the rationale behind that password that you ever used in your entire life?
That's the older standards that came down from places like NIST, who they said in the very beginning, hey, you need to rotate your passwords. You know, they need to be complex. This was an older standard back before computing got as fast as it has gotten, and also before we had things such as two-factor authentication. The standards have changed, at least from a NIST standpoint, as far as their recommendation, but now it's just up to the end users and the companies and software developers to kind of go along with those or, you know, adjust them how they see fit. Anybody else?
I know you're talking about businesses, but this is personal too.
Mhm.
And so most people don't have virus protection, don't have malware protection, and they always bypassed MFA.
Mhm.
So just speak to that on a personal level, people's personal computers.
Personal level, you know, a lot of us don't necessarily remote into our systems from the outside, but you know, a lot of our systems are connected to the internet. I don't know if there's anybody here that doesn't have a computer connected to the internet. You know, a lot of times that comes in as an email attachment, or you've gone to a particularly bad website. A lot of personal phishing goes for banking information to try to get, you know, into your bank accounts to transfer money, or to get into maybe your payroll account so they can change your deposit to one of these new fangled credit card type paychecks. It's a green dot scam, is what they call it.
So you recommend everyone should use those tools like virus protection and keep them up to date and renewed annually and that type of thing?
Oh yeah, definitely. If you personal computers, virus protection, you know, most of your bet everybody here uses Windows. You know, keeping your Windows up to date, firewalls turned on. Don't install things you're not familiar with. You know, a lot of times people, they need to do a task and they search around the internet and they find a random program they think will do the job, but is that program compromised? Is it? I've lost my word. Is it trustworthy? You know, that's one big thing. You can find a lot of these programs on some of these third-party download sites that the program from the distributor is great and wonderful, but these third-party websites go in and add hidden installers into them as well. Some of them you might see is a real common one is when you install, say, something like a notepad, something that doesn't come with your computer, they might add a McAfee antivirus in there as well. So you end up installing two things for one. That's how they get you on a lot of those things like that. Not saying that McAfee is a bad thing, but you know, when I'm only expecting to install a notepad program, I don't expect to install antivirus. Personal computer backups, you know, if you have data that is, you know, personal to you, such as photos or tax documents. You know, there are various cloud-based systems nowadays that offer backups. You can buy a cheap USB hard drive nowadays that back up your important documents to there. You know, if you keep all of your important stuff somewhere separate, if your computer gets ransomware on it, you can just easily, you know, reformat it and start from the beginning. It's a little bit harder to do that in business situations because they go after backups as well. Any other questions?
I'd ask some, but I'm not sure. I'm smart enough to know what to ask.
Dr. Stewart, to your point, I think Chris is going to be joining our club soon, so it's going to be nice having an IT-minded person in our club. So thank you, Chris, for being with us today. Like I mentioned, we won't meet next week due to President's Day. The following week, the 27th, I think we're still kind of up in the air if we'll be meeting here or at WRC. So keep an eye out for an email on that. I'd like to thank everybody that helped out today: Troy, Lawrence, Stephanie, Les, Art, and Lester. And I'd like to thank all the guests that were here today. Thank you for being with us. If you will, please stand to recite the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do,
Is it true? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it feel goodwill and better friendship? Will be beneficial to all concerned?
have a great week.